As previously covered, as the Knights of the King's Guard continue their secret mission to silence the 900 plus paramours of King Aegon IV, who he had indulged in sexual pleasures just for a fortnight, um, they finally make it to Esseros and start off with the furthermost northern city, working along the coastline. And much to their amazement, they see where King Aegon IV was correct. He lost count after 900, because by the time they get done with their consensus, it actually is a little over 900 women. The best news, of course, that King Daeron II will be pleased in is when they report back their successful mission and to the fact that none of them were pregnant. So they continue on to finally winding down the last of the 900 women that they have found and paid handsomely to keep their silence for the remainder of their days. Finally, after a very long, tedious, top secret mission, the Knights of the King Guard finally journey their long way back to King's Landing. And they are quite fatigued because this was quite the journey to try to restore the integrity and reputation for the House of Targaryen. Again, this is only in theory because such an embarrassment by one who is supposed to represent the House of Targaryen would be one that would not be publicly made aware of, so that the tarnished name to the House of Targaryen could be eventually restored to its full glory as it had been once before. So finally then they get to King Daeron II, and he, seeing them upon arrival, waits until the throne room is cleared, even if he has to make a gesture so that they know this is a private matter. They report that upon having taken such a consensus, that there were indeed, as Aegon IV had predicted, about 900, actually a little more than that. They also get his approval, as they remind him that he had stated that whatever tactic they decided to use to silence them, that he would approve. And so they inform him that in their best interests, rather than have a river or ocean of blood, because of so many women, that they elected to pay roughly 100 gold pieces to each one. Now, for anyone who knows anything about the history, when Cersei Lannister was worried about the Iron Bank not being able to keep King's Landing's funds available, it wouldn't be all entirely her fault, especially if one does their research properly and looks back to King Aegon IV. So you figure 900 women, 100 gold pieces per 900 women, or a little over, that's a lot of gold coin. So, in which case, King Daeron II, theoretically, then would have approved this tactic without any penalization to their decision on how to silence them. And he also gives them good news that none of them are pregnant. Moreover, that they quite readily, and upon their sworn life of keeping their head at most, and at very least their tongues, nothing will ever be mentioned of this again. At the same time, King Daeron also most likely would have made the Knights of the King's Guard also swear not to discuss among themselves, and it is to be considered a dead subject never to be brought up. To reward them for handling this delicate royal political matter quietly and as discreetly as possible, King Daeron II, being known as the much nicer king, who, though his father, King Aegon IV, was not, because he was a gluttonous pig, male chauvinistic, and a male slut and whore, because of the reputation he built for himself, that they can have at least 2 or 3 days off. So this concludes the secret mission of restoring the integrity and reputation of the House of Targaryen. House Butterwell. House Butterwell is a noble house of the Riverlands. The blazon is, their blazon is Undy, green, white, and yellow. House Butterwell was once a rich house with extensive lands, though its main incomes came from dairy cows, and they once had a castle called White Walls. House Butterwell was said to have had the best wines outside of the arbor. In history, Alton Butterwell was Master of Coin during the reign of Maegor I Targaryen. When Maegor decided to take more wives as he needed an heir, Alton suggested his widowed stout sister as a match who, while no great beauty, had given birth to 7 children, so her fertility was beyond doubt. Maegor was scornful of this offer. Lord Butterwell was hand of the king to Aegon IV Targaryen. King Aegon stayed one night at House Butterwell's castle, White Walls, and gave his hand a dragon egg in return for access to Butterwell's 3 maiden daughters. By the next day, all 3 had royal bastards on the way, according to the stories. His grandson, Ambrose Butterwell, was also a hand of the king for Daeron II Targaryen. At the beginning of the first Blackfyre Rebellion, he performed so poorly that some thought he was in league with Daemon Blackfyre. He was replaced by Lord Hayford as hand. The Butterwells attempted to keep one foot in each camp during the first Blackfyre Rebellion. Lord Ambrose's eldest son fought for Daeron, while his second son fought for Daemon, but both sons died at the Battle of the Redgrass Field. His youngest son died at the Great Spring Sickness. In 211 AC, Lord Ambrose had a tourney of White Walls, which became the setting for the Second Blackfyre Rebellion. As punishment, Lord Bloodraven allowed Ambrose to keep only a tenth of his wealth. White Walls was stripped from the Butterwells, and Bloodraven decided to have it dismantled to prevent it from becoming a Blackfyre monument. House Butterwell at the end of the 3rd century. The known Butterwells during the time span of the events described in A Song of Ice and Fire are no member has appeared yet. The historical members, of course, would have been Alton Butterwell, Master of Coin, during the reign of Maegor I Targaryen, Lord Butterwell, hand of the king to Aegon IV, his daughters, Lord Ambrose Butterwell, a grandson of the above, and head of House Butterwell from the reigns of Daeron II through to Aerys I, a former hand of the king to Daeron II, and his sons and daughters. With this review of his past life, though it was in theory that they would give up all 3 bastard sons to an orphanage, this now takes a turn of events. 2 of the sisters would have given them up at the orphanage, and yet the 3rd, the youngest most likely, kept her son, so that, in accordance to this review here, that son then would be hand of the king to Daeron II, but because it would appear he served Daemon of the Blackfyre Rebellion, he would soon be replaced. Once again, we won't go too deep on it because we had already touched it a lot earlier in King Aegon IV's reign, and prior to his reign, Daena Targaryen, one of the 3 sisters from the Maiden Ball, was quite notorious in escaping. She was quite the escape artist, and probably this would be another attraction for any man that saw her beauty. But she wanted to have a child, and unfortunately, as feared by former King Balon I, she became a temptation to her cousin, Aegon IV, and thus he did her a favor and she did become pregnant. But unlike the paramours and of the paramours, 9 others that he had chosen specifically that he claimed he truly loved, he did not get Daenerys Targaryen pregnant a second time. In the end, she had a bastard child by her cousin, King Aegon IV, who was known as Daemon Blackfyre of the Blackfyre Rebellion. And so this is where the Blackfyre Rebellion line starts and would continue for a few generations. In the end, as we had covered, there were many paramours. As King Aegon IV said, he had lost count after 900. And though, again, it is only in theory that, in fact, a secret mission to try to restore the integrity and reputation of the House of Targaryen, King Daeron II most likely would have sent out a selected few of the King's Guard to silence the women in the best tactic that he would approve of their choosing. So, though it is in theory, we had covered that most likely because it would be too much blood for one King's Guard to handle, let alone a few for those over 900. And so such a gracious deal would have been made for them to remain silent and never speak of the experiences they had for the remainder of their days. But as he had stated, and though it has been confirmed that his sister and wife, Daenerys Targaryen, was not among the few that he had chosen that he was truly in love with. So we will now review each of the 9 selected that he would claim to be truly in love with. Bethany Bracken. Lady Bethany Bracken was a member of House Bracken. She became Aegon the Unworthy's 7th mistress. In history, Barbara Bracken was King Aegon IV Targaryen's 5th mistress, and her father, Lord Bracken, had been his hand, but they were sent away in 172 AC, and Melissa Blackwood had become Aegon's mistress. Barbara and her father groomed her younger sister, Bethany, expressly to win the king's favor and displace Melissa Blackwood as his mistress. In 177 AC, Bethany caught Aegon's eye when she visited Stonehenge to see his and Barbara's bastard son, Aegon Rivers. By then, the king was fat and foul-tempered, but Bethany delighted him, and he took her back with him to King's Landing. However, Bethany found Aegon's embraces distressing, and for comfort she turned to a handsome knight of the King's Guard, Sir Terence Toyne. The pair was discovered and bathed by Aegon himself in 178 AC. Even though they proclaimed their love, Bethany was forced to watch while Terence was dismembered piece by piece. Both Bethany and her father were then executed. Barbara Bracken. Lady Barbara Bracken was a member of House Bracken during the reigns of Baelor I, Viserys II, and Aegon IV. She was the 5th of Aegon the Unworthy's mistresses. Appearance and character. Barbara was buxom and had dark hair. She was vivacious, but not that modest. The Blackwoods claimed Barbara was not as beautiful as Melissa Blackwood. In history, when the princesses Dana, Rhaena, and Elena Targaryen were confined to the maiden ball in the Red Keep. They were accompanied only by maidens who had been sent to court by lords and knights who wanted to gain favor with King Baelor I Targaryen. Near the end of Baelor's reign, one of these maidens was Barbara Bracken, daughter to Lord Bracken of Stonehenge. When King Baelor I died in 171 AC, King Viserys II Targaryen released the princesses from their confinement, and 16-year-old Barbara met Prince Aegon Targaryen, who became entranced with her. When King Viserys II died in 172 AC, Prince Aegon ascended the throne as King Aegon IV Targaryen, named Barbara's father his Hand of the King, and openly took Barbara as his mistress. Barbara gave birth to a bastard son of Aegon, Aegar Rivers, only a fortnight before Queen Nerys Targaryen nearly died in childbirth. With Nerys lingering near death, Barbara's father began to speak openly of Barbara marrying King Aegon IV. However, Queen Nerys recovered, and talk about how Barbara marrying the king became a scandal. Princess Aemon and Daeron Targaryen forced King Aegon to send both Barbara and her bastard son away from court. They returned to Stonehenge, where Barbara raised her son Aegar. After Barbara, King Aegon IV took Melissa Blackwood as his mistress. In response, Barbara and her father began grooming Barbara's younger sister, Bethany, to replace Melissa, which eventually worked in 177 AC. However, in 178 AC, Bethany was caught abed with the handsome knight of the King's Guard, Sir Terence Toyne, and both Bethany and Lord Bracken were executed. Barbara's teats. In 172 AC, King Aegon IV Targaryen was visiting Stonehenge when he saw the hills called the Mother's Teats, and renamed them Barbara's Teats on account of her resemblance to his buxom mistress's breasts. After Barbara was sent from court, Aegon took a new mistress, Melissa, that is, Missy Blackwood. Missy was slender, and Barbara was heard to say that she was flat as a boy. When Aegon heard how Barbara had disgraced his mistress, he renamed the hills Missy's Teats and granted them to House Blackwood. The Blackwoods still called the hills Missy's Teats, and the Brackens still call them Barbara's Teats. Famous quotes. Missy's Teats, the Blackwoods called them, but they were Barbara's first, by Lord Jonas Bracken. Miget. Miget, also known as Mary Meg, was the young and buxom wife of a blacksmith. She was the second of Aegon IV Targaryen's mistresses. In history, while riding near Fair Market in 155 AC, Prince Aegon's horse threw a shoe, and when he sought out the local smith, he came to notice the man's young wife. He went on to buy her for 7 gold dragons, along with the threat of Sir Joffrey Staunton, the King's Guard. Miget was installed in a house in King's Landing. She and Aegon were even wed in a secret ceremony conducted by a murmur playing a septon. Prince Viserys put an end to it, returning Miget to her husband and placing their daughters with the faith to be trained as septas. Neget was beaten to death within a year by the blacksmith. Neget gave Aegon 4 children for a family in as many years: Alysanne, Lily, Willow, and Rosie. Cassella Vaith. Cassella Vaith was a member of House Vaith and a lady of Vaith. She was the third mistress of Aegon IV Targaryen, although prior to his ascent to the Iron Throne. In appearance, Cassella was a willowy maid with green eyes and pale white blonde hair. In history, after the submission of Sunspear during the conquest of Dorne, Cassella was one of the hostages sent to King's Landing, as she was the daughter of Lord Vaith. She was escorted by Prince Aegon, who kept Cassella a hostage in his own chambers. After the Dornishmen revolted and killed King Daeron I Targaryen, all the hostages were to be killed. Aegon, by then bored of her, returned Cassella to her place with the other prisoners. The new king, Daeron I Targaryen, pardoned all the hostages and personally took them back to Dorne. Cassella never wed or had children, and in her old age she was consumed by the delusion that she had been Aegon's one true love, and that he would soon send for her. Once at Vaith, Dunk met the aged lady, Vaith, and spoke to her with such lack of grace as to put his own life and eggs in danger. According to Egg, however, Lady Vaith was mad, so it is unclear if that danger could have been avoided. Jaime Lawston. Jaime Lawston was a member of House Lawston and was the daughter of Lord Lucas Lawston and Lady Selena Stokeworth. She was King Aegon IV Targaryen's 8th mistress, and rumored to have been possibly fathered by the king himself. In history, Jaime was brought to court by her mother, Selena Stokeworth, in 178 AC when she was 14. King Aegon IV Targaryen made Lord Lucas Lawston his new hand, and it was said, but never proved, that he enjoyed mother and daughter together in the same bed. Aegon soon gave Jaime a pox he had caught from the horrors he had seen after Lady Bethany Bracken's execution, and the Lawstons were then all sent from court. Melissa Blackwood. Lady Melissa Blackwood, nicknamed Missy, was a member of House Blackwood during the reign of Aegon IV Targaryen. She was the 6th of Aegon's 9 mistresses and the best loved of them. Appearance and character. Melissa was slender of frame and pretty. She had a kind heart, was generous and modest, and was well loved. In history, Melissa became the 6th mistress of King Aegon IV Targaryen early in the king's reign, in 172 AC, replacing Lady Barbara Bracken, who had been sent from court in disgrace. Even though she was Aegon's mistress, Melissa's kind heart and generosity led her to be befriended by Aegon's sister wife, Queen Nerys, her brother Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, and her son, Prince Daeron. Melissa was slender of frame, but Barbara had been buxom. When Barbara was heard to joke that Melissa was flat as a boy, King Aegon, who previously had renamed the hills known as the Mother Teats after Barba, that is, Barba's Teats, named the mountains for Melissa instead, and granted them to House Blackwood. Members of House Bracken still refer to the hills as Barba's Teats, while members of House Blackwood still call them Missy Teats. Melissa was King Aegon's mistress for 5 years, during which she gave birth to 3 children, 2 daughters, Maya and Gwenny's, and a son, Brynden Rivers. Brynden would later be able to maintain close relations at court due to the fact that his mother had been well loved during her time there, even after her dismissal. Lord Bracken, with the help of his daughter Barba, groomed his younger daughter, Lady Bethany, to replace Melissa. In 177 AC, King Aegon visited Stonehenge to see his bastard son by Param, Aegon Rivers, and Bethany caught his eye and returned with him to King's Landing. A statue of Melissa can be found in the Godswood of Raventree Hall, the seat of House Blackwood. Serenity of Bliss. Lady Serene of Bliss, also called Sweet Serene, was the 9th and last mistress of Aegon IV Targaryen. There was one child of their union, Shiera Seastar, the last of the king's great bastards. In appearance and character, Serene was considered by many to be the most lovely of Aegon's mistresses. She was cold and haughty towards others at court. In history, Lady Serene was the last daughter from an ancient but impoverished Valyrian noble family of Bliss. She was brought to King's Landing by Lord John Hightower, the new hand of the king. Rumors spread that Serene was much older than the king, practicing dark arts to retain her youth and beauty. She died giving birth to the last of the king's bastard children, a girl called Shiera Seastar. Felina Stokeworth. Felina Stokeworth was a member of House Stokeworth during the reign of Aegon III Targaryen. In history, Lady Felina was the first mistress of Aegon IV Targaryen. She made him a man in 149 AC when he was 14, she being 10 years his elder. When a knight of the King's Guard found them abed together in 151 AC, his father, Prince Viserys, wed Felina to his master-at-arms, Lucas Lawson, and persuaded King Aegon III Targaryen to name Lucas Lord of Harrenhal in order to remove Felina from court. However, over the next 2 years, Aegon paid frequent visits to Harrenhal. Felina returned to court at King's Landing when King Aegon IV named her husband Hand of the King, bringing her daughter, Jane Lawson, with her. It is rumored the king enjoyed both mother and daughter together. Belliger Authorities. Belliger Authorities, also known as the Black Pearl of Bravos, was a smuggler, trader, occasional pirate, and the captain of the Widow Wind. She was born of a union between a Sea Lord's son and a princess from the Summer Isles. The account by Archmaester Yandel claims her parentage was a Bravosi merchant's daughter and an envoy from the Summer Isles, but that is not correct. Her appearance was she was as black as a pot of ink. In history, after Princess Nerys Targaryen almost died in 161 AC after giving birth to King Daeron I Targaryen, sent Prince Aegon, her husband, to Braavos on a diplomatic mission. There he met Belligear. His affair with Black Pearl continued for 10 years, though it was said that Belligear had a husband in every court and that Aegon was one of many. Famous quotes: "The first Black Pearl was a pirate queen. A Westerosi prince took her for a lover and got a daughter on her, who grew up to be a courtesan. Her own daughter followed her, and her daughter after her, until you get to this one." By Marilyn. The family, as it is, Belligear gave birth to 3 children during the decade, 2 girls and a boy of doubtful paternity. Bellanora authorities, Narha authorities, and Balerion authorities. Bellanora became a famous courtesan under the name the Black Pearl of Braavos, and her descendants continued the tradition until today's Black Pearl Belligear. During the time of King Aegon IV's reign, prior to him finally passing on from obesity of wine, drink, and food, and overindulgence of sexual pleasures, Aelena Targaryen, youngest daughter to former King Aegon II, or the third, excuse me, had, at the time when she finally got to be released with her siblings from the Red Keep's maiden ball, married for the first time. This marriage, of course, took place in 176 AC, during the reign of King Aegon IV Targaryen. Aelena married her first husband, the wealthy but elderly Lord Ossifer Plum. He died on their wedding night, supposedly after seeing her naked. But Aelena became pregnant and gave birth to a son called Viserys Plum. There were those who were dubious of the boy's parentage and had suspicions on who might actually be the boy's father. None dared speak their suspicions aloud, however. As William finished up the reading of most of the Paramores records, though names of the 900 plus women that shared their experiences with him were willfully and purposely kept from the record. Kind of sat back thinking a minute. So, what did you think, William? I think that the starting of his history was correct. He could not rule himself. I'm also thinking that, based on his gluttony of food and wine, and overindulgence and certain pleasures, that he didn't get out and exercise much. Kind him kind of strangely. And is that all you've learned? Well, no. I think that it affected his judgment, which kind of would make it in question as to um, his ruling as a king, that um, he became somewhat treacherous, since one of the paramours had fell in love with a knight of the King's Guard. That was kind of treacherous in itself, just because she had chosen to be with one who wasn't so obese. Um, so he probably got, I don't know, maybe he felt betrayed or um, jealous of this. But it was his own undoing. He couldn't blame anybody but himself. That is true. You do speak wise on this. Well, I think it's getting kind of late, because we have spent much time on this, and we should take a break right now, William, and go have some lunch. So William stands then. Yes, I am kind of getting famished myself. Um, so I guess that's the end of his ruling history then. Not exactly. There is a bit more to this. There's more? Yes, there is one more part to his history, though it is a very bad tarnishment to the reputation of my house of Targaryen. All right, well, um, what else is there to be covered? Well, when we come back from lunch, you will read the last part, and then it should go on to the continuance of the great bastards of the House of Targaryen, who he, um, without good judgment, legitimized, much to the shock of the realm of the kingdom. And then, of course, there are the other siblings, which continue on to the next Targaryen king that ruled and tried to restore the integrity and reputation that the House of Targaryen once had at that time. All right, well, um, guess I'm ready to move on to the next part then. Well, good. So let us go ahead and head off to the banquet hall and get something to eat now, Liam. So, with that and respecting her wishes, they leave past the other library with the flag and go into the dining hall to have their lunch.